Every country's struggling to find that boundary. The U.S. is a tough one because, we have the notion of the First Amendment.
The irony and cognitive dissonance from the other side of the aisle, it's deafening. You could cut it with a knife. They are at the same time denying that censorship is occurring, but suggesting that there's more material that needs to be censored. This is a hearing on censorship that began with an effort, with a formal motion from the other side of the aisle to censor Mr. Kennedy. They do not want him to speak, yet that is the topic of this hearing. They have kept him from speaking. A collusion between the government and private organizations. Mr. Kennedy, in your opening statement, you introduced us to this word malinformation. Can you tell us more about this made-up word, what it means, and some of the things that you've said or tried to say that you've been censored for that's been characterized as malinformation?
Yes, Congressman Massey, and if by your leave, I'd like to just respond briefly to some of the, what I would call defamations that have been just applied to me by the ranking member. I'm happy to talk to you about my opinions on these issues, what you have stated and tried to associate me with through guilt by association is simply inaccurate. Virtually everything, every statement that you just made about me is inaccurate.
Florida for his 5 minutes.
Mr. Kennedy, do you want to respond to that? Can you do that quickly?
Yeah, I've never heard of Mr. Bowles, and I've never heard of that super PAC. This is typical of the accusations against me at this hearing. They are baseless. Every single one I've been subjected to a parade of defamations. If I believe those things about myself, I wouldn't want to hear me either and want to gag me and lock me in a room somewhere. But none of those are true, and they were all of this parade of accusations and defamations were made against me in a way that was calculated to make sure that I could not respond to any of them. Every one of them I'd like to respond to, but I was not allowed to.
The chair now recognizes himself. Hard evidence. Mr. Johnson said that we're not only witnesses to censorship, we were victims. The Republican website on the House Judiciary Committee posted this story, and it was limited where it could go. You got to. They exercise censorship of the House Judiciary Republican account, for goodness sake. Ms. Wiley, you were a lawyer for the ACLU?
I was.
Mr. Kennedy, I remember when the ACLU defended they were the champions of the First Amendment. You remember that? You remember that, ACLU?
I remember when the ACLU represented Nazis who they were appalled by.
Appalled, disgusted by, and yet they would defend the crazy things they said, right? That's how much the First Amendment meant to them, right?
Exactly.
Everyone to read Mr. Kennedy's written statement. I read it this morning. Amazing. He walks through the history here. That is what's at stake, and that's why what you're doing, whether we agree with what you say or not, and I disagree with what you said last week, what they played. I think a lot of people did. You've clarified it, but it's about protecting the Constitution and the First Amendment. I'll give you the last minute and a half, Mr. Kennedy.
Well, what I would say is that the founders and the framers of our Constitution knew that democracy was a very inefficient system, that it had all of these built-in inefficiencies and difficulties. They said that they felt that it would give us the one thing that would give us an advantage over totalitarian systems was this capacity for the free flow of information and a complete lack of control of debate, so that ideas that would eventually mature into policies would be annealed in a furnace of debate and then rise through the marketplace of ideas rather than being dictated from above. And that's what would give the energy, the vibrancy, the vigor to democracy. When they invented this democracy, we were the first one in the modern era in 1780. By 1865, 5 other nations had imitated us. Today, it's 190 nations based upon our system. We are supposed to be the exemplary democracy, and the corner foundation stone of our system is freedom of speech. All of the other freedoms depend on it. If we lose that, not only do we lose our democracy in this country, but the entire world loses us as an example.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better.
This is astounding to me. Mr. Kennedy, can you talk about the censorship, the effort of the White House and pharma to suppress the acknowledgement of natural immunity and why they might have been doing that?
Well, again, there was an effort to suppress information, not, in fact, if you read the Twitter files and the email correspondence between Facebook and the White House, there was an acknowledgement that they were being asked and they were complying with censoring information that everybody knew to be true or highly likely to be true. The purpose, and in fact, the term misinformation did not denote falsehood or veracity. Rather, it was a euphemism for any information that departed from government orthodoxies. And it is very dangerous. And you know, the congressman a minute ago said 1 million people have died because of misinformation about vaccines in this country. But in fact, our country had one of the highest vaccination rates in the world and the worst health outcomes. We have 4.2% of the global population. We had 16% of the COVID deaths. Blacks in Haiti with a 1% vaccination rate were dying at a rate of 15 per million population. And same in Nigeria, had a 1.3 vaccination rate. They were dying at 1 in 14 per million population, 14 per million population. In our country, blacks were dying at 3,000 per million population, 200 times the death rates in other countries. And this holds throughout the world. We needed information. We should have all been sharing information openly and talking to the 15 million doctors through the internet who were treating patients on the front line all over the world and channeling the best therapies, the most successful treatments, so that we could all figure it out. This is not a time in a pandemic to I'll just say this one thing. Trusting the experts is not a function of science. It's not a function of democracy. It's a function of religion and totalitarianism, and it does not make for a healthier population.
Let me ask you this. You referenced your father and your uncle and the party that they were in. What has happened to your party with respect to the First Amendment? Would they recognize the position now?
I think, listen, I'm a Democrat, and I believe in if you went through a checklist of all of the things that my father believed in, that he fought for, that my uncle believed in and fought for, I would check every box. I feel my party has departed from some of those core values, and one of the reasons that I want to run for president is to reclaim my party for those. But it's got to, listen, this is not a partisan issue. The First Amendment, it just seems crazy to me that anybody thinks that it's okay to censor, and there's a lot of information that I don't like. There's hateful information, but as the chairman was saying, in 1977, the ACLU went out and supported Nazis who were walking through a Jewish neighborhood in Skokie, Illinois. And they said, that's important. We hate what they're saying. We're repulsed by it. But we cannot survive as a democracy if we are not ready to die for the right for even people who are appalling to speak. The democracy won't work. Unfortunately, there's no other way to control it but through the First Amendment and free speech.
Amen, and thank you for those comments.
Time of the gentleman has expired. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. We appreciate the work you're doing to defend the First Amendment. And thank you for just very compelling answers and compelling testimony and the work you've done and how important this is for the country. I mean, if we don't have a First Amendment, it's just, I'm frightened by where we go.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
You may not. You may not.
I just
Mr.
want to
Chair,
respond.
Mr. Chair,
I don't
the time
think-
is out. We're done.
I haven't adjourned the hearing, and I don't think you're the chairman.
I wanna-
Mr. Chair,
Chairman's discretion.
I
We're gonna
know
let
it's
Mr.
your
Kennedy-
discretion.
We're going to let
but
Mr. Kennedy.
He has had so much additional time.
Well, I think everyone's had
Why?
additional time. and we're gonna
Why?
get-
Why are you doing that specifically for him?
Because
I
we
just
don't.
want
as
to
opposed to other
explain
people?
I'm sure the witness.
super PAC.
I'm sure the
On
Democratic
other
witness will be
places.
as short as he possibly can.
No. Are you going to allow our witness to just give another piece?
No,
of
let
what-
him address
I
the
wanna
defamatory
acknowledge-
comment that was made
address-
about him that's untrue.
That was not defamatory. That is a legal definition that was not met.
I want to acknowledge
it my-
information about the super PAC that you mentioned.
Go ahead.
I've just been told that that super PAC is connected to somebody that we have a connection to. It's not a super PAC that I've endorsed, and it's not one, as I said, that I've ever heard of.
Thank the gentleman for that statement, and I thank you for your testimony. The committee is now adjourned.